Welcome to Shul.com. We are learning Enlighten our eyes, Rabbi Goldschmidt, different tactics on how to have Shemirat Einayim. We're reading on page 57. A nation born, a destiny carved. The right at the dawn of our history, the opening pasuk in Sefer Shemot gives a two-word definition description of the Jewish nation's essence. Ish ubeto. Each man and his house. Chazal see this as a testimony that the Shevatim kept each to his own tent, and none ever looked at even his brother's wife. Wow. So it says, Ishu Beto, that none of the Shevatim even paid attention to their siblings' spouses at all. Their descendants, a nation 2 to 3 million strong, left Egypt 210 years later, all stamped with those self-same characteristics. They saw how the Egyptians were the world's leading society in permissiveness and immorality. Yes, Egypt, the most highly advanced civilization of the day, who in science, architecture, and astrology would astound her 21st century counterparts, yet they, the proud Jewish immigrants, were unimpressed. So what he's saying here is that the Egyptians were a very advanced society, very knowledgeable, smart, advanced in technology, in so many different things, but they were very permissive, which means they allowed men with men, women with women, men with married women with other men. They didn't care about any of that. They were all open to it. The Egyptians' self-indulgent wallowing in unbridled lusts is detestable to the Jew. Their society is the very antithesis of the Jew's mandate to exercise self-control, curb his natural appetites, and subjugate himself to a higher will. When the lewd Bil'am surveyed the Jewish encampment from his mountaintop viewpoint, a gasp escaped his lips. Every family tent had been so discreetly positioned as to afford its occupants their full privacy. Although they might be breaking camp and journeying onwards that very next morning, Sniyut was never compromised and no deviation ever countenanced. So what he's saying from here is that what impressed Bil'am, that when he saw Bnei Israel that they were camping and going from place to place in the desert, and in the desert they moved a lot from, they had 42 masaot, different stops. Happens to be for like 38 years they were in one location for the most part. So like for most of the trip of the 40 years they didn't move. They only moved a lot in certain points and then they stopped for a lot of periods. But he said what was interesting is they didn't know when they were going to move, but they always paid attention that whenever they built their tents, they didn't have the openings to someone else's opening. So if someone was opening and closing their doors or whatever, everyone had their privacy. So it came to be that the Jew-hating Bil'am, in spite of himself, bequeathed us the undying tribute. Matovu ohelecha Yaakov. How good are your tents, Yaakov? See Yalkut Shimoniam Bamidbar 24-5. Who can possibly fathom what beautiful words Hashem is saying to his heavenly court today as he looks down and watches his ever-faithful people? In spite of the unspeakable, unprecedented, and unrelenting degeneracy all around them, they stubbornly hold onto their dignity and purity and still battle to keep their eyes pure. This nation, sanctity is its bedrock, clings to its maker. It laughs at the predictions that in a short time the ancient concept of purity will simply roll over and die. Which means to say, how many people in the world are actually focused on protecting what their eyes see? How many nations? How many people? It's a dying breed of people, And there are people that control their lusts and their desires, but to the level of their eyes, he says most people will think that this is just going to pass, but it didn't. The Jewish people have kept on to it. In Parashat Matot, we read about the warriors sent by Moshe Rabbeinu to inflict vengeance on the Midyanim and the spoils that they took. The Targum Yerushalmi lauds their incorruptible integrity. These men refused to look at the princesses they captured, not lapsing for a single moment, even while removing their jewelry. Wow. They would take the princesses, remove all the jewelry from them, and not pay attention or look or focus on the way they looked. The Or Hayim brings from Hazal that so great was their fear of compromising their Shemirat Einayim, even while carrying out the direct command of Hashem, they conjured up a bright idea. They covered the women's faces before removing their jewelry. They knew very well that after sinning with a non-Jewish woman, a man can walk away easily enough in this world. But in the next world, her spirit will cling to him like glue and disgrace him in Gehinnom. The merit of their perfect conduct would serve them well on their final day of judgment. So he's saying here that if a person goes with a non-Jewish woman, he walks away from her after the act, but that woman, her soul or the klipa, ends up clinging to the guy for longer, unless he makes teshuvah. The Shelah once promised his Talmid that if he would guard his eyes and mouth, he would reach the loftiest of madrigot and come to fulfill the complete will of the Creator. That's brought by the Shla Kadosh, that if he'd protect his eyes and mouth, he would gain Kedusha. What's interesting on this is I had a whole talk with Rabbi Minzer about this one Friday night when we were walking home, where I told him, when I was doing my research on Sheminat Einayim and Sheminat Lashon, I came to the conclusion, and I asked him about this, that it could be that a person who does Sheminat Einayim and Sheminat Lashon, right? He protects what he's looking at, what he's speaking about, and maybe even further what he listens to, obviously, because that's tied into speech. He can gain tremendous amount of Kedusha, holiness, and spirituality without even learning Torah. That's what I was telling him. I don't remember exactly what he told me back, but I remember we had this whole conversation where I told him, I'm like, it could be, a lot of times you see these Mikubalim, they have a tremendous amount of Shemirah. They dress sanua, they wash their eyes, what they eat, what they speak. That brings them a tremendous amount of Kedusha that when they do learn Torah, they can advance in a tremendous way. Kedusha, for Jewish people, is the key to the success. Because a person could do all the mitzvot without any Kedusha. He could look at the wrong things, speak the wrong things, and hear the wrong things, and do all the mitzvot of the Torah. So it's the Kedusha that's the key of it. And that's what he brings down today. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen v'Amen.